Welcome to the Building Ventilation Summit. Created and hosted by AMCA Australia, the summit is designed to ignite an important national conversation regarding building ventilation and its role in managing the spread of COVID-19. We would like to thank our event partners for supporting the Building Ventilation Summit.
Welcome back to the final session for the first day of the Building Ventilation Summit, hosted by AMCA Australia, and thanks to our event partners, the Victorian Government, Victaulic, Milwaukee Tools, Reece Plumbing, Windsor Management Insurance Brokers. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about supply chains. As we've been hearing for a while, supply chains have been stretched, lead times are ballooning, ships are being stranded at sea while the cost of containers has skyrocketed. But innovative suppliers have seen these challenges as an opportunity to review their delivery approach, innovate and develop closer and stronger relationships with their customers. In this session, we're going to hear from three of our valued event partners, Victaulic, Milwaukee and Reece, about how they're helping guide their customers through the choppy waters, pardon the pun, impacting supply chains. With that, I'll just quickly introduce Adam Kelso, who is the Operations Manager for Victaulic, presenting from Brisbane today. Victaulic is a developer and producer of mechanical pipe joining systems headquartered in eastern Pennsylvania and the originator of the groove pipe coupling joining system. Victaulic has 15 major manufacturing facilities, 28 branches and over 3,600 employees worldwide. So who better to give us with an update around some of the supply chain challenges being experienced in the market. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Shannon. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present and to have a discussion today. I look forward to it. It's certainly been a challenging period. I'm sure everyone is experiencing the same sort of issues, but they're a little bit different. I think I'd like to try and get a feel for the tools that we have at our disposal, and what levers we've been able to pull to try and leverage some outcomes. As Shannon touched on, who are we, Victaulic at a glance? Well, our overarching goal, a global goal here is we want to bring innovative productivity and confidence to every construction site right around the world. So innovation is the technology that's used, innovation in the joint, and confidence is just that. It's confidence in the joint that's been made, and it's confidence in the service and the supply and the partnership that is in place. So 1919 is when we were founded, headquartered in the USA, as mentioned. We have 6 foundries around the globe. In Australia, we leverage 2 of those foundries as our supply origin points, one being in China and the other one being in North America at our headquarters in eastern Pennsylvania. Most of our business is, just being transparent there, obviously most of our business is in North America, but we do have obviously a growing, business in Southeast Asia, in Europe, emerging markets, and obviously Australia is very much on a fast track, and we need to be a little bit more agile than other regions. Particularly with our supply chain impacts and the transit times, even at the best of times, the transit times, our planning needs to be probably on the cutting edge of where we can leverage the best possible service parameters to our markets and to our customers. So we have 4,000 employees globally, 58 in Australia. 36 of those are in our external sales team. And as I mentioned previously, we use 2 foundries, but in Australia we leverage 3 distribution points or 3 branches. Brisbane, Melbourne and Perth, which has been quite a useful trait to have during the pandemic, particularly in 2020 when we needed to load level and also have some shutdowns, particularly in our Melbourne branch during that time. Having the flexibility across the 3 different sites certainly helped in that regard. So before we cover off what Victaulic has been able to achieve in terms of addressing some of the supply chain issues, I wanted to just do a couple of quick slides. I promise I won't go into too much detail here. I'm not on the news as the presiding economist, but I did grab these off the ABS and the RBA websites just because I felt like it helped us illustrate and understand the context of the environment that we are facing and that we need to try and combat. Of course, we know most of it, it's on the news and we live it, and we know some of the supply chain impacts in terms of service, but we also need to understand the local context, how our local markets and obviously the consumer sentiment, CPI, GDP, all those sorts of growths. Looking at this, it's certainly a band effect, an elastic band effect, if you will. You can see, particularly off to the right chart here, the consumer sentiment, which is a reflection of how perceptions of everyone's finances are relative to the prior year. You can see there that since the initial COVID spike in Feb 2020, it's been a rapid increase since that period, and that's reflected in the GDP growth as well. And as a consequence, inflation rises, which you can see in the middle chart there. In terms of the supply chain challenges from local market factors, we have a clear import bias in the Australian economy, as evidenced by the chart on the left. I guess since even working back pre-pandemic, even towards 2010, you can see just a steady and in some areas a rapid decline in business investments for components, which would impact greatly what would be local manufacturing propensity. So it's a clear import bias, which means if you look at the previous charts, which talked about growth factors, there's obviously a high consumer and service orientated, market that's put in place within the Australian context. We currently have full employment. Obviously, the unemployment numbers aren't by definition at that full employment definition, but you can clearly see that, particularly based on the vacancies and advertisements chart that I put in the middle there. There's a lot of movement in the employment market, and that corresponds also with a lot of demand. And that obviously puts strain on a number of factors, but it's particularly put strain on across to the right here, the average cost of labour per output that's been produced in a local context. I obviously wasn't able to get that data from a China context, obviously where our manufacturing is, and also from a US context, but I thought it was a relevant chart to sort of help illustrate what the local environment is doing from an Australian viewpoint. Commodities prices, so there's a lot of cost incrementals there. Before I get into the transit incrementals, I'll sort of touch briefly there on staff impacts and the pressures that we face there with staff retention. Commodity prices have also seen a spike. Most of our raw material is in iron ore, obviously in steel, as a steel and cast iron forge producer. So we have, I've just included the RBA index there to look at the steady increase in commodity prices over that period, particularly even pre-pandemic, to give some context. Got the iron ore chart here, and over to the right I've added the China gross output. I couldn't find the US one for context there, but you can see the red chart there shows the rapid increase in steel generated products ex-China. So this is from a Victaulic response point of view, and I wanted to sort of show some of the supply chain challenges we've faced from an inbound shipping point of view, and those related costs. So there's two impacts. One has been cost and one has been transit. Both of them have been horrendous, to be honest. We're seeing an improvement ex-China, but I'm still yet to see that from ex-USA. So this is a very busy chart. Apologies for that, but I included it all because we have a number of different ports that we're shipping to. We've got Melbourne, Fremantle, Brisbane, Auckland, Christchurch. And what I've done here is I've broken it out by quarter. So we work on a calendar year as our fiscal year. And, you can see right through 2020, surprisingly, I would have expected, certainly the expectation was to be an increase in shipping costs through the 2020 period. But that was then that period where we saw the decline in the GDP number. But really, the shipping impacts didn't hit us until mid-year last year. They hit us very quickly, as you can see. June, July, rapid up increase in August and September plateaued, probably right through to the end of the year. I've got February's quotations in there. I'm just being transparent with what our numbers are. I hope you guys all appreciate that. But this is the per container rate from China to Australia, US dollars door to door. So you can see there is a slight downward trend, which is very encouraging. I'm really hopeful that can continue or at least stabilise. If that February number and March number can continue to dip, and that's obviously going to be a benefit to us all. In terms of transit time, this table down the bottom right, this is the average transit time across those corresponding lanes. just look down the bottom, there's a lot of data in there. So in 2019, just as a summary, we averaged 30 days, actual days, door to door. In 2020, it was 40. And surprisingly, in 2021, it was 41. So at the start of 2021, we had some capacity issues, but not surprisingly, they managed to improve their capacity issues once they upped the price significantly. So we're paying a lot more, but we have seen a restrained, somewhat door-to-door average in 2021. I thought it would be a little bit higher than what was the 2020 number. The US hasn't been as forgiving, I guess. We've had rapid increases from 2020 to 2021 in the container costs. That they're a 40-foot container cost, just for context, and that's from the East Coast to our RDC in Brisbane. The average transit time has jumped significantly. That's almost 20 days. That's the main impact for us, which is quite hurting us, particularly because a lot of our US-based inventory is more the specialised products, the specialised valves and the like. So those sorts of things can really hurt our commitment that we made on the initial slide to want to provide confidence to the sites that we supply. As the last slide, I wanted to give some context on inventory and how I mentioned at the outset what tools do we have at our disposal in the face of all of those issues that we talked about or that I spoke about in the previous slides. Really, the only response we could have, if you look at the top right, we're looking at stock line availability. You can see the rapid decline as we move towards May last year, April, May. On the previous slide, I showed you the rapid increase in shipping costs, and the transit time stayed about the same. But as a consequence of what you see here in black, that is our manufacturing. So what is coming out of our foundries? The only response we could have to the decline in service and the increase in reservations that we're seeing is to make a rapid increase, which we had to do in our inventory balances on hand. And you can see the blue line there is what is in transit. So the problem that we had right throughout 2021 is even though we increased what our requirements were from our manufacturing partners, what was provided to us on the water for two reasons. One is manufacturing constraints somewhat, but the other one is shipping constraints. What are the available containers into those regions were holding us back a little bit in some of those regards. So we've finally got to a point now where they have, connected, and you can see the rapid drop in manufacturing corresponds with the rapid increase in transit. So we are getting a much healthier turnaround time from start to finish on our manufactured products, which is a great result. But where we are currently positioned, as I talk now at the end of January's number there, we're at our highest inventory that we've ever been. I've been with the company for 11 years now, and it is a concern, but where we're not concerned, it was the only thing we could do to maintain our commitment for our service. We're also confident that, as you can see here from the reservations, so reservations are for project requirements or more one-off type inventory requirements, and you can see the increase in there as our services dip. There's a higher propensity for our sites to get more involved with the supply line of products, and that's the real key takeaway from my point of view. A collaborative planning model where we're getting better, more intelligent insight into what is actually going to be required, and what we need to do moving forward is we get a more stable environment, try and reflect more of those increases in project reserves into our actual inventory number. So we obviously want to see some of this working capital burden that we're facing from an inventory point of view. We need to see that start to turn, which will correspond with what's happened from our manufacturing point. We've got a more stable state of affairs in my view, and I think the charts show that. So I see that continuing for the upcoming months. Hopefully we see the trend in the decrease in shipping costs continue, and if we can keep the positives around those collaborative planning models and get better inventory setting in place, then I think we're in for a steady state of affairs over the corresponding months, which will reflect in this continued uptrend in-stock line availability and service to work out where our KPI number is. So that's all from me. No more slides. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions or further discussions.
Thanks very much, Adam. Look, good to hear that there's some positives on the horizon, hopefully, and just looking at those charts, there's some really rich data in there that hopefully our CEO, Scott Williams, will be able to pick up on in the panel discussion in a little while's time. But before we do that, I'll hand over to Brett Hall, who is the Strategic Account Manager with Milwaukee Tools. Milwaukee has been around since 1924 and has become one of the world's most trusted brands in delivering high quality and professional tools, sets, kits and accessories. The global organisation is a leader in developing innovative solutions that deliver increased productivity and durability. It prides itself on understanding the demands of a constantly changing workplace and investing in research and development to deliver solutions for a safer and more productive job site. Brett, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks for the great introduction, and firstly, thank you to the AMCA for the opportunity to present today at the summit, and I really hope that everyone's enjoying it. For those of you who don't know, my name is Brett Hall. I'm the Strategic Account Manager for Plumbing and Electrical. I've been with the business for just over 2 years now, and I head up our expanding Plumbing and Electrical division, and I've got a team of 24 people that I work with. I've been around for a while, 20 years in plumbing, electrical and trade hardware industries, and various roles from marketing to buying and now into sales leadership. I am going to talk about supply chain today and some of the challenges that we faced through the pandemic over the last couple of years, and also our response to that. But just to give you a little bit of an overview on the Milwaukee business, I'm going to start by introducing our vision and our mission. So firstly, our vision is very clear: our products on every job site and in every toolbox. And our mission is to improve the lives of our users. So everything we do is about the users who purchase our product and use them on the job site every day. And every product we release has an innovation attached to it and helps improve the life of the user out on the job site every day when they're working. I don't have time to go through our complete history. Shannon gave you a little bit of an insight there, but it's fair to say at Milwaukee we've been around for a while, over or coming up on 100 years. And way back in 1924, the business started when Henry Ford was making the Model T, and he came to Milwaukee over in the US and needed a drill to help with the construction of that. Fast forward the clock forward to 2022, and we've now got over 2,000 products in our range. So the core of our business is cordless power tools, but we're also a supplier of hand tools, accessories, storage, and now light equipment. And on this slide here, you can see some of our proprietary technology and innovation that are part of the Milwaukee business. The likes of M12, over 100 tools with one battery that powers that tool. Over 120 solutions in the M18 range and growing again, one battery powering all of those different tools. We've got Packout, which is our modular storage solution. We've got our hand tools and accessories that I spoke about before that we launched in 2019. And we've also now got our light equipment platform, MX, which again is a cordless solution, 72 volt for products that have previously been used that have always been either petrol powered or 240 volt. So in terms of the way we operate with our authorised distribution model. So we've got about 2,500 partners across Australia and New Zealand that we work with. And for us, as we navigated our way through the last couple of years, one of the key things for us was to have really strong two-way communication with all of our partners. So that way they knew exactly where we were at and some of the challenges that we were facing, and also equally we were getting information and insight from them around some of the challenges that they were facing. And there was, as limited number of surprises as what they could be. So we were very transparent around our delivery times in the warehouse, around our availability of stock, and all the things that were going on and how we were able to respond to those. And that really was a key measure for us in terms of staying on top of things as we navigated our way through the pandemic. We also wanted to create ways for all of our partners to continue to have strong sales throughout the pandemic as well, because ultimately there was a whole bunch of challenges. There was lockdowns going on, there was restrictions on job sites, there was people that were stood down from work and not working. So we wanted to make sure that our product continued to sell, and we had a whole bunch of different exclusive releases and promotions that went on over the last 2 years to help drive sales out. I won't spend too much time on this slide going through who all of our partners are. These are our Australian partners, and it's fair to say that we've got a really strong mix of tool specialists, industrial specialists, plumbing and electrical specialists, and also now transportation automotive specialists as well. The key thing for us as Milwaukee is that we're focused on the trade professional, the heavy duty user. We're not focused on the DIY market at all. So hence why you don't see any authorised partners here that have DIY orientated. So in terms of some of the challenges that we faced throughout the pandemic, they were significant. Impacts on inventory, shipping delays, challenges in our manufacturing plants around resource capacity. There was shortages of components. The list goes on and on and on. So we had to find ways to pivot and adapt to that. And purely from a distribution centre point of view, we had to be really, really efficient. So we operate out of 2 DCs at the moment. We've got one in Western Sydney and the other one in Perth. One of the things that we did early on in the piece was make sure that we were regularly transferring stock between the 2 DCs to make sure that we balanced their stock position. So if the Perth warehouse had stock and Sydney didn't, we were able to ship it across the country and remain in stock. We had to be really careful with our people as well to make sure that we didn't have any downtime or loss of productivity throughout the pandemic. I can sit here today and say that our warehouse has remained operational throughout the entire period. We've never had one day of shutdown. And how we were able to achieve that was by splitting shifts, so making sure we had 2 separate shifts. So if there was any outbreaks, we were able to keep the other shift completely safe and keep productivity happening. We also introduced rapid antigen testing for all of our DC employees as well. Meant that they had to start 15, 20 minutes earlier and get a test before they went onto the site. But what it meant was that we could work with peace of mind and keep the productivity going and keep the supply going to our partners and our end users. We expanded the coverage of our WADC. Previously, it was just looking after the WA market. We expanded its capacity and brought in South Australia and Northern Territory. So that took a lot of pressure off our main DC in Sydney and helped us navigate our way through. We also invested in people, 110 new employees that went into our warehouse and supply chain operations over the last 12 months to help keep up with the expanding demand and all the challenges that the market's been presenting. Our service levels remain strong. We were really committed to those all the way throughout the pandemic, and we spent over $2 million last year in air freight and a similar amount the year before. That was our commitment to our channel partners and to our users to make sure that, under no circumstances were we going to be out of stock. We were going to be in the best stock position that we could, across our product range. So our managing director often jokes that across the last couple of years, we could have bought a jumbo jet with the amount of money that we spent on air freight, but it was an investment in our future, and it was an investment in our partnership and our commitment to our users and our authorised partners. We also invested significantly in stock, so we upped our safety stock to make sure that any additional stock that was available out of our factories, and again, we share these factories because we're a global business, that we were happy to sit on that and have extra stock available so that when demand was increasing or there was, challenges regarding inventory, that, we had stock available when a lot of our competitors didn't. And that enabled us to pick up additional market share because we were in stock when a lot of others weren't. We also established a new control centre. So this is a new operation in our Sydney DC where we've basically got a hub now, and we can have real-time troubleshooting. So there's a whole bunch of information now that's flowing into that operation centre, and it's enabled us to keep our finger on the pulse. So we know what's happening around deliveries, inbound, outbound. We're able to follow up on any urgent freight queries that come through. We're able to make sure that we're staying efficient and productive. So we've even got a full-time resource from TNT, our freight provider, on site now to manage any urgent freight queries when they come up. One of the other things that we found through the pandemic is that it's forced us to think outside the square. It's forced us to think differently and we've had a continuous improvement mindset throughout. And there's a whole bunch of things that have really forced us to become more efficient and more productive, and we're going to continue those post the pandemic as well. And we've created a dedicated team across our business to manage that ever-changing landscape. You never know from one day to the next what you might be dealing with. For those of you who don't know, we actually run a job site solutions program. So that is our network and army of job site solution specialists who are out in the field every day. So we've got a team of over 130, and that team's growing all the time. And they engage directly with our customer base. So they're out on the job site. So that was our direct line of communication through to the people who purchase our products. So we were able to give our users feedback on all the challenges that we were facing and how we were performing and what we were doing about it. And equally, we had a line of communication, I should say, coming back into the business from our user base as well, and some of the challenges they were facing and what they were going through. And that really put us into a very, very strong position as we navigated our way through. In fact, we conduct over 70,000 job site visits every year. Last year was a challenge because there was periods of time where it wasn't safe for us to be out on the job site, or there was lockdowns going on in certain states. And again, we pivoted here and found new and innovative ways to communicate with our users, whether it be through social media, whether it be through video calls, phone calls, emails, whatever it took to stay in constant contact. And what underpins it all for us is the Milwaukee Way. So this is our corporate culture and values framework, which encapsulates and underpins everything we do. And, for us over the last 2 years, keeping our team safe, keeping people upbeat, keeping them healthy in mind and also body was really, really important. And the Milwaukee Way was something that kept us all on track, throughout that entire period, and particularly around teamwork, organisational planning, and attitude and value. And we take this so seriously that we actually KPI our team on this in terms of how they live these values. And again, really important for us in terms of navigating our way through various challenges. So as I finish up my presentation today, I'm going to leave you with a quote from Steve Richman, who's our Group President of Milwaukee Tool over in the US. Every company says it has the best people in the world, but when you look at our story over the last decade, the proof of that is glaringly apparent. Our constant has been and always will be the passion, determination, and all-out obsession of our employees. Thanks for, on behalf of the Milwaukee business, for the opportunity to present, and looking forward to any questions or feedback that come up in the open forum.
Thanks very much, Brett. Yeah, a really interesting presentation, and a few things spring to mind, which you often hear, but often much harder to implement. Never waste a good crisis, and invest in your business when others aren't, and also to innovate. And I guess the commitment to your partners in that instance has really shone through as well, Brett. So congratulations there. I'll now take the opportunity to introduce Robert Clark, who's the regional leader for Reece. Reece is Australia's largest plumbing business and bathroom suppliers, and has 8 businesses in allied industries. Established in 1920, Reece has 800 branches across Australia, New Zealand and the US, supplying more than 300 products across the plumbing, bathroom, building, civil, irrigation, heating, air conditioning and refrigeration industries. The Reece brand is synonymous with quality, focusing on the best products and services for customers today and innovation for customers for tomorrow. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Ben. Thanks for the intro. I've been with the Reece business for 32 years, working in a number of different roles throughout Australia. Currently looking after Victoria and Tasmania in the HVAC divisions. So I've got 4 short slides for you today, so it certainly won't be death by PowerPoint. I'm basically going to give you an update on how the Reece Group responded to the COVID-19 pandemic, and also talk a little bit about our stock position and where we were during COVID and where we are today, I guess, still during COVID. So I'll start off with our response. So we had very clear communications from our senior leadership team from the get-go, which was fantastic, with over 650 staff throughout Australia and New Zealand. The communication was great. So we started off by stepping straight up and setting up barriers to protect our staff and our customers, giving us that at least 1.5 metre gap. Also having pick areas for when customers came in to get goods, making sure we've got areas where there was no contact. As you can see, we were pretty keen on the cleaning side of it as well. Aiding us on that was our DoneSafe application, which sets reminders to clean every hour or 2 hours or so forth. So we really stepped it up there. As you can see, like a lot of companies, like a lot of branches in retail, in the trade, masks, sanitisers and gloves and so forth. We also stayed very close to our customers, whether it be by a phone call or, as we all know now, Microsoft Teams, which has been a fantastic tool. All of our branches contacted our customers just to get an understanding of where they were at in these unpredictable times, to see what we could do as a partner to work with them, help them at the time and in the future. So again, it was all really about keeping our staff and our customers safe. That was the key. So what did we learn? Communication was key, as I said earlier on, in regards to speaking with our customers, but also really importantly communicating with our staff, because we really just basically wanted to make sure they're okay. There was a lot of issues and stress along the way, so that was really important. We had to move swiftly with a lot of changes, as we all know, coming nearly every day. So as you can see there's a few people from our Reece Support Centre. So we had to move 450 plus people from our Reece Support Centre in Burwood, basically into their own homes, which also meant setting them up digitally as well. So this is critical because we needed we needed a Reece Support Centre team to be operational, to look after the operational side of the business. And as we all know, and we learnt very quickly, that somebody hit the fast forward button on the digital space. So I'll just move over to our Reece Cares division. Being in branches, we had to keep the doors open and keep as many staff as we could there as possible. So those staff that wanted to be vaccinated were out and about lining up in queues. It was getting difficult. So our Reece Cares division opened up a hub in Victoria. So for staff, family and friends, which means there was no queues, no lines, in and out and back into the branches. So basically we could continue to service our customers and keep our branches open. Final slide. So just touching briefly on our distribution network and our global supply chain. So I'll just quickly, it's probably been spoken about a bit around our containers. Late 2019 to mid 2020, cost of a container was around $1,500 to $2,000 US dollars. Then in August escalated to $10,000 USD. So stabilised late last year, but hasn't moved down much, and certainly nowhere near the pre-COVID figures. So, and just to add a challenge to that, even today around 30% of our containers come in on time. So just another little challenge there along the way. At the time, the Reece Group decided to pay the higher prices on the containers. There were others that understandably held back and sort of hoped and waited for the price of the containers just to come down a bit. It never happened, unfortunately. But we had to do this as a group because at the end of the day, we're a service business, a service company, and we had to have the product ready for the customers. In regards to our global supply chain, thankfully we've got a lot of long-term partners overseas. Yes, they did have issues with people like we did with staff and so forth, but we've been very, very lucky and been able to get the product in. There's definitely areas where we do have issues with certain products. Thankfully, again, with the number of branches that we do have, we can kind of rob Peter to pay Paul. So if we can't get a product from our warehouse that's run out, we've got multiple branches where we can pull product from to satisfy the customer. And so from a stock perspective, we are seeing our challenges, but we're in a pretty good place now. And the fact that we have really good relationships with our customers means if there are any imminent delays, we can talk with them and plan that out. And finally, I'll just give a quick overview on our, which has been a real bonus for us, our distribution network, our NDCs, our warehouse. So we have one in Dandenong there, which is 50,000 square metres. To give you an indication of size, that's around 7 MCGs. Had to add another one, which is half the size, nearly half the size in Melbourne, just across the road. And we have 3 other warehouses in Sydney, Brisbane and Perth, and they're all approximately around 26,000 square metres, which has really come into play in today's climate. That's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Rob. I'm now going to hand over to our CEO, Scott Williams, to chair our final panel for the day, where I'm sure we'll touch on a number of the themes that Rob's just mentioned, things like freight, shipping, looking after your customers and taking a collaborative approach. Over to you, Scott.
Thanks very much, Ben, and let me firstly just say, thank you, Adam and Brett, and also Rob. Really insightful to learn, strategically how your businesses have, approached this pandemic. I'm going to start with you, Adam. Some really interesting data there, so thank you for your research. And I guess one of the observations there, as I've listened to you speak, Adam, and also Brett, and obviously yourself too, Robert, that, all of your companies have approached things slightly differently, but pretty much all the same. That's around making sure your inventory levels are correct, making sure you engage with your clients. But to you, Adam, if I can firstly, I think my observation from those graphs is your stock levels are probably about 30 to 40% up on normal, if that's right, your holding levels.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, so I just wonder, how that looks moving forward. How long do you continue to hold that level of inventory? There's a cost to hold inventory. I'm not going to suggest there's obsolescence, but there's a cost. So from your perspective and Victaulic, what does it look like for you moving forward in the next 6 and 12 months and beyond?
Well, I think I'd like to, and I think that there will be a stabilisation of the market, and I think, based on the level of inventory we have, I feel like that would be, able to be sustained if it needs to be. But I think what we're looking to do is obviously to try and get some gains there in our working capital number. We needed to artificially inflate that inbound manufactured number and then have that translate to from manufacturing the in-transit a little bit quicker. It would have helped what has been our overall inventory number. I think the end of the year period has obviously come at a bad time for that. Our manufacturing is caught up, more has come into transit, and then we've had a slowdown in what we actually pull through our warehouses. So the number is a little bit overinflated to where it would potentially be. I think the natural level is a little bit lower than it currently is, maybe 5%. But to give some context, I think we've got the 3 DCs, as I mentioned. The capacity of those DCs is an issue. We do need to lean on some 3PL partners, particularly in our Melbourne facility at the moment, mainly because we just didn't expect to be at this level of pallets in our business locally, until years from now. So it brings forward that horizon, but we're confident that as long as our collaborative planning models are in place, we're investing in the right types of materials that we will have pulled through. We continue to invest in innovative new products, so our MPI doesn't suffer. As long as we stay to that, then eventually it will correct, particularly if you see the improved trend in the transit times and the manufacturing schedules getting back on track. So as long as we don't have any more outbreaks that cause to such a degree where there needs to be significant lockdowns, for example, then I feel like there'll be a period of stability over the corresponding quarter, and then our level will start to decline, our on-hand number. May not go down to that, we spoke there about 30%, it may not get back to pre-pandemic levels, but I think it will get us halfway there, and perhaps into next year it will start to correct it and get closer to where we were previously from a turns point of view.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam, for that insight. I'm just going to stay with you a sec there as well, if I can, and then we'll come to the other panel guests. You know, I guess and you certainly displayed another graph there, which is around what you're seeing is obviously a decrease in shipping costs at the moment. And we all hope that trend continues, but quite clearly, I'm assuming that's coming from forward scheduling of shipping, supply demand, where, you know, there is some certainty now about supply chain. So I guess to you, the question is, which, you know, you've elaborated and touched on it to a degree, is that the way forward then for Victaulic is obviously, I assume it's very fluid, it's very dynamic, is just monitoring that supply chain, that shipping schedule, making sure that, you know, you preserve a level of inventory to meet your customer demands, and I guess just being, being fluid and dynamic from the point of, you know, being able to ramp up or ramp down subject to, in fact, what's occurring.
Yeah, that's right. I think you can only the best response is to remain as flexible as you can be. Our transit time, I guess from start to finish for inventory, when we're placed in order for replenishment of our stocks, historically was sort of 10 to 12 weeks. That's changed significantly, particularly in 2021. I think some of those start to finish timelines blew right out to almost double that. It's getting back to a better level now, but you have to change your supply chain model to reflect that. I think, I just touched earlier on whether, Reece was talking about whether they take up those, what was seen to be at the time inflated container rates, and the best decision was to take them because it never did correct. And it's the same with supply chain. I think you have to be adaptable with your inventory number. Yes, it's a higher retained inventory, but as long as you can support that from a working capital context, you're effectively investing into your future. You're trying to bring forward what is a future requirement almost for that year, and just trying to be a little bit a higher propensity of caution, I guess, is the term there. And if the market does rebound swiftly where that inventory does get pulled through, then we make an adjustment. If it's also becomes a bit sluggish, then we do the same again. We reduce the number of reservations, we reduce our safety settings. So you're absolutely reiterating what your point is there. You need to keep an eye and react as swiftly as you can based on what is going to be the best play at the time.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Look, I'm going to come to you, Brett, if I can, and thank you for your insights, to Milwaukee. Obviously you've enjoyed, by the sounds of it, what's been a tremendous period of growth. 110 new employees. I think that I understand as well that, in fact, you're in employment mode, a lot of new people that you'll be adding to the team soon. And obviously a slightly different strategy, I appreciate with Adam and Victaulic, it's about the shipping lines. In your case, it was about air freight. And let me just clarify, $2 million, was that right? $2 million that Milwaukee absorbed in additional freight costs as a result of just trying to make sure you serviced your customers?
Yeah, look, it was. And the reason we did that was because we were committed to remaining in stock, for our dealers and the users of our product. So, air freight isn't our preferred method of transporting product. It's generally sea freight, but if you've got an opportunity to bring product in 2 weeks, 4 weeks quicker, and the difference between being out of stock and losing a sale and letting a customer down versus having it in stock, then that's an investment that you make. So for us, it was the right investment, and it helped us out, in a number of occasions.
Yeah, no, that's tremendous, and congratulations to Milwaukee on that growth, Brett. I'm going to come over to you, Rob, and then we'll just probably jump into some general questions. It was interesting just listening to you speak, Robert, particularly the focus of Reece with your people. And I think that, that's been a critical thing through this exercise, but 450 people to go and relocate. And in fact, Reece head office here in Melbourne is located, Robert, where are we? Probably about 500, 600 metres up the hill from AMCA House here. And I think amongst that as well, you might have been relocating to a new building or trying to relocate to a new building. So obviously been a very challenging time from a people perspective inside Reece.
Yeah, definitely. Look, as you were saying, we're just around the corner here, but soon to be in Cremorne there, the old Rosella building. Definitely a challenging time for them Reece Support Centre staff. There are people we all have different behaviours, and there are people that really struggle with being at home on their own without that social interaction, which is a real challenge. And you've really got to stay close to your people, to just watch their mental health and just make sure they're okay. But there was also some people that liked, working from home. I guess you could say some of the introverts that like their own space. So there are definitely some people that like staying at home. It'll be really interesting to see where that takes the Reece Group when we open up our new facility there. You may see some people doing 2 or 3 days a week, because we are in the world now. I believe we've been focusing on flexibility with our people for a long time, Scott. But I think this is really. I think everybody's aware that COVID has really brought flexibility to a new level. I think there'll be people doing bits of time at home, and but the unlucky blokes, or you could say, I'd say lucky blokes like myself, we really didn't have a day off. We were the, I guess, essential services. Which I'm grateful for personally, because I don't like being at home, sitting at home alone. So, there's going to be some further challenges ahead, but it's and I think also too, it's a tough time at the moment. I think most companies right now is probably one of the toughest times around employment and getting the people in your business. So, some interesting times ahead, but also exciting.
Yeah, skills is critical. So how did Reece? We heard from Brett before talk about your 2 distribution centres at Milwaukee, one being in Sydney, one being in Perth, and obviously rat testing in the before the shift starts, and obviously just making sure that the shifts were split up. You spoke before about the significant warehouses that Reece has. So how did that impact you? Was there downtime, closures, issues, delays that Reece had to deal with? Yeah,
look, definitely initially. Everything was around following the rules, I guess, the government rules. There were times where we were really lucky within our branches. There wasn't, amazingly, at the peak of it, there wasn't that many branches that closed. So, but if we did have an infection, deep clean, so to be closed for 24 hours, all of them staff would have to be off for a week. I think it was 7 days, and then we just pull people from other branches so that particular branch could stay open. From a warehouse perspective, again, I think we're very, very lucky. There's a lot of people taking a lot of precautions. Again, deep clean if something happened, and take all the precautions. I guess the machine continued to roll on. We were really lucky, so to be able to get the product out, we really didn't hit any major hurdles. Yeah, no, great to hear. Look, I want to talk about a sensitive subject, and pricing. You knew this was going to come up, didn't you? It had to. Yep. And please, take whatever license you'd like here to address the question. But I guess that we heard before, and you touched on it, Rob, about the increases in containerised freight. There's no doubt we're seeing increases everywhere. Perhaps I can just go around, both, Victaulic, certainly Reece in the HVAC sector, and certainly not disrespecting in any way Milwaukee, but just from the HVAC perspective, significant supplier of goods. We've got situations where, contractors have gone out there and obviously quoted on various projects. And, that might have been 12 months ago, 6 months ago, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation where, we're seeing significant increases. So, sensitive subject, and I might firstly come over to you, Adam. How's Victaulic managing or handling that? Obviously, is that about having the discussion with the client early? How is Victaulic addressing that?
Yeah, we obviously have project pricing, which is typically locked in for the duration of that project. I think in terms of cost pressures, we're about to have an adjustment, which I believe is to the end of March. I need to clarify that. Sorry, I'm not across that, but I think the best way to forecast, if I would, on that would be the raw material trends. So the shipping lines does look like the shipping costs, the inbound freight cost does look like it's stabilising. I think if that continues, then that's really the main cost incremental impact that's hurting us. I think iron ore is somewhat stable, particularly from the back end of last year, and obviously from a raw material point of view, from the raw materials from our foundry, that's the main cost component. So if that continues on a downward trend, we get some stability with our teams, and particularly from a manufacturing point of view, we improve our manufacturing timelines, transit times start to improve, and more importantly, transit costs improve. Then I think the cost adjustment that we're about to have, which is more a reflection of what happened at the back end of last year, I think that would probably be it for us for the year. I guess you can't project too far forward, but we really are rebounding, or I guess reflecting our cost model based upon the market. And I think it's only fair that you pull it back when you have the same opportunity to do so. When you're talking about incrementals, but you need to go the other way too. I think that's what the current context and environment we have in place. If we do need to lock it in projects, we can do that. But from a market point of view, we need to be able to move up and down based on the parameters that are around us and what's happening in the marketplace.
Yeah, thanks for that, Adam. And yourself, Rob?
Yeah, look, even before the pandemic, if something goes, in the general industry, if something goes up a couple of % or something, we'll send something through to our customers, but it generally won't have a major effect. But in reality, and I know myself, I've been doing it for well over a couple of decades, even when I was in, particularly managing stores and so forth. As soon as we get notification of a price rise, particularly around your key SKUs, which is going to have the biggest impact, let's say copper tube, we are on the front foot straight. As soon as we get notification, straight away ringing the customers, hey, it's going to go up, let's say 5% next month. That gives the customer an opportunity to work with us, or we work with them, and put something in place for that customer. I've learned every customer is different. So one customer wants this, one customer wants to try and buy a lot of product for a particular job, but there's risk in that as well, because we've been seeing this for a long time, but during the job, if it does this, there's risk in that as well. So look, we just really clearly communicate with our customers, hear what they've got to say, and work with them. Sometimes we'll stagger the prices. If we get 5, we might be able to give them an extra month to give them a bit of assistance, and if that helps the customer, and it just bonds and strengthens the relationship. So, and I think a lot of the customers, particularly in the last few months, are aware and know what's happening, and they know prices are continuing to rise. But as Adam said earlier, hopefully we're starting to see some stabilisation, and let's hope we see some drops also. But in reality, like I think of something like copper tube, I think it's sitting at around 10,000, up near 10,000 at the moment. It's in high demand, particularly with electric cars and so forth. There's so much copper product that goes into that, so the demand of copper tubes going through the roof as well. Yes. So it's not a good mixture. So I guess it all again comes down to communication. That's all we can do. Yeah.
Okay. And for you, Brett, would you like to comment on that from a Milwaukee perspective, on those cost pressures?
Yeah, well, we haven't been spared. That's a fair comment to say. It's an impact that's been felt, globally, and here in Australia as well. And we've had impacts to our business that we just haven't been able to absorb. So there's been all the things we've discussed around the cost of raw materials, the cost of freight, the cost of shipping. We obviously tried to minimise the impact as much as we could, but where it's been required, we've had to go up. But whenever we do have any form of increase, we try to communicate that to our customers as early as possible, give them the maximum amount of notification. give them the opportunity to buy up on inventory at the current price, so that they can maximise that opportunity and that existing price in the market, and also to make sure that we're always competitive as well, because that's important too.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brett. Look, we're probably at the end of the panel session. I guess if I can, just a little bit of a wrap up. There's no doubt, what we're hearing is, there are cost pressures, but I think the key takeaway seems to be that, having those early conversations, making sure that there's very clear communications through that supply chain. And I think, to quote a comment you made to me a little bit earlier today, Brett, no surprises. No surprises, have those conversations no matter how hard they are about delays, if it's about pricing, whatever that is, just make sure no surprises and you're up front. So I think that's the key message. Look, I want to just personally say thank you to you, Adam, and in particular to Victaulic for your support of this event. It's been absolutely tremendous. Also, if I can, to you, Robert, thank you to Reece, HVAC and R, and also, if I can, across to you, Brett, Milwaukee. Thank you for appearing today. Thank you for your insights. And to all you three of you, we really value the partnership with AMCA Australia, and we appreciate you appearing on this panel.
We would like to thank our event partners for supporting the Building Ventilation Summit.